markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker in the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Tech-led slump today, of course. Communication services, information technology, helping lead losses in the S&P 500. Tesla, among the worst performing stocks in the index right now. And that is down over 11%. A profit there slumping for a third quarter in a row. Not far behind Alphabet. Those shares down 3.7%. Yield on the two-year Treasury, worth noting, plunging to the lowest since February. You have speculation mounting that the Federal Reserve officials may cut interest rates as soon as this month. The two-year yield, 7 basis points lower, 4.37 right now. The 10 is down 4 basis points. That's at 4.21. The Fed meets at the end of the month. Former New York Fed Chief Bill Dudley changing his tune. He now says, get on with it. He wants a rate cut in July. Right now, the S&P 500, 93 points lower. That's down 1.7%. 54.61 on the index. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 400 points, 1% lower. The NASDAQ 100, 529 points lower. That's down 2.7%. It's worth noting that Russell 2000, it's down, but down by only 0.6%. We check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Alex and Paul.
Hi, JT, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Alex Steele, Paul Sweeney, live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, doing that streaming thing on the internet. YouTube.com, search Bloomberg Podcast, and that's where you'll find us. Let's talk commercial real estate, because I have no idea what's going on here. I need to see some price action, price discovery out there in the marketplace. If I'm going to buy an office building on 3rd Avenue in Manhattan, what kind of discount am I going to get? Fortunately, Abigail Doolittle knows a ton of people in that business. Abigail Doolittle is a markets reporter, but she's wired into that commercial real estate business, which means the whole Morgan Stanley real estate mafia alumni crew. One of them is Sonny Kelsey, co-chief executive officer of BGO. I said, who is BGO? They got $85 billion in assets under management. What rock have I been sleeping under? So these guys are big. Sonny, thank you so much for joining us here in our studio. Abigail, thank you so much for joining us as well. Sonny, all I know is I walk down 3rd Avenue in a lot of empty buildings, and I'm just wondering how representative is that of the commercial real estate business? I've been told that's too simplistic. How do you guys view the commercial real estate business today? It's got to be like something you've never seen before.
It is something like we've never seen before. And you'd think after 34 years, you see everything. And, you know, we always get asked to compare cycles, and every cycle is different. And this one is definitely different. I'll answer your question in a second, but the context around it is you just pick the asset class that's been hit the worst in the last 4 years, right? 2 years of a pandemic, call it, where people were working from home and a bunch of other stuff. And then you've got it piling on in terms of kind of bad secular news for the office sector, right? Work from home was one problem. I'm a real estate owner, so I think it's a problem. Work from home was one problem, which never would have happened without technology like Zoom. But then you have AI, you have a bunch of other stuff coming, which are all going to come after jobs, presumably. Office in gateway cities, like New York City, is probably the, if you want to think about lower left, if that's the bad place to be, that's the bad place to be, right? I do agree when the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater and they say all real estate is bad. You know, people focus on that because it's kind of what's present, right? Abigail and I were talking about how the streets and out here and the retailers are all empty that used to be here. That's what you see, right? What you don't see as much is people are still living somewhere. You still get your goods and services somehow. Those are coming to you from a warehouse somewhere as opposed to coming to you because you're going to a store. Not that those haven't been immune. Right. But office, it's been tough, and honestly, I don't see it getting better in the near term.
Well, then to that point, what part of real estate is cyclical versus secular?
Yes.
So, the warehouse point you make, that has to be a secular shift, but we're still in a cyclical market, so that's got to be very tricky.
Correct. Yeah, well, so look, I would say, as I think about investing, I think about the 4 quadrants, and people think about debt, equity, public, private. I actually think about cyclical, secular, and headwind, tailwind, right? So if you think about what's in secular decline and has secular headwinds, office is the best asset class to think about, right? All the top-down news is bad, the bottom-up news is bad, capital markets are bad. In terms of what has cyclical tailwinds, right? What has cyclical tailwinds and secular tailwinds? anything related to technology. So I'm sure you've had a lot of people come in and talk about data centers. We have a big data center business too. It's been great. The issue is it's no secret that it's great. So there's a lot of money piling in. There's a huge amount of demand, which is what makes it such a great cyclical opportunity. I think where we actually do our job and where we can be in a position to make the most money is places that have secular tailwinds and cyclical headwinds. Okay. Right? Now, most things have cyclical headwinds right now because of the capital markets. When you ask Paul when things are going to come back, until credit comes back into the market, we're not going to see it. But right now, it's a great time to be in warehouses. The secular tailwinds are still pretty good, but it's expensive to build them. It's expensive to buy them. And so if you can figure that out with data, with anything else to kind of get an edge, that's good. Housing is the best bet, in my view, right now. And this is a U.S. comment. Half of our portfolio is U.S., half is non-U.S. People have to live somewhere. We have a structural housing shortage. But we have some issues. And so to me, it's actually the really interesting place to be.
Well, speaking of your portfolio, it's not all bad because right here over on Park Avenue 425, I've walked by that building many times. It's the new Citadel building. It is absolutely beautiful. And there is the Bentall Green Oak stamp right on it. You know, when we think about this pain, though, it really comes back to rates. And you've had, you know, we've stayed in touch. And I know that you had a great call on rates that back in 2021, 2022, when the Fed forecasted or telegraphed that they were going to raise, you took a particular view. Bond traders didn't do this. I know a lot of other commercial real estate investors that were more the hopium. Talk to us about what you were seeing, what you did, and what it meant for your portfolio.
So I think, and again, I'm not an economist, but my philosophy has always been you can do nothing about what you can't control. So focus on what you can control. We can control the rate environment. So when the Fed raised rates and they did it at the pace that they did it and at the the slope at which they did it, our view was we couldn't count on when they were going to come back down again, right? That was, and so what do? We invested against that. Now, part of it is, why did we think they were doing what they were doing, right? And I think a lot of people focused, what I would say, on the demand side. They focused on cash. They talked on central banks that pumped in, COVID money, all that stuff. We actually focused on the supply side. The benefit of having a big global industrial portfolio is we see throughput. We have a big business in Asia. We saw China shut down. The world's largest manufacturer shut down for 3 years. It's a little bit of a statement of hyperbole, but they shut down for 3 years. Our view was you are not going to get back to normality until China reopened. China didn't reopen until the end of 22, beginning of 2023, after the 5-year Congress. So until that happened, it was our view that you weren't going to see stuff come back to normal again, right? Whatever normal is, by the way. And so the way we kind of thought about it is we're going to ignore it. There are a lot of people that are trying to invest against, hoping interest rates would come down quickly and then bet against that. I have too much scar tissue from too many other cycles.
Would you buy a Third Avenue office building today at 30 cents on the dollar?
I think there are plenty on offer, and we haven't bought any yet. Okay. All right. At some point, it will get interesting. I think the issue right now, back to the cyclical secular thing, is there's so many headwinds to office right now. And
what about conversion?
So conversion looks great. Theoretically, it sounds great theoretically, but if you talk about one of those Third Avenue office buildings with a 40,000 square foot floor plate and you try to actually cut that up into an apartment, people are going to be living in bowling alleys, right? And that's basically, if you just visualize it. So actually conversion worked great downtown after 9/11. A lot of stuff got converted, but those are older buildings with better ceiling heights and other stuff. They converted a lot to multifamily and a lot to hotels. Bigger windows, everything.
Silly as that sounds, but yeah.
Yeah, people never used to live on Wall Street. Now people live on Wall Street, but that's why. Look, it's going to be a slow grind.
So when you say office buildings, Paul was saying 30 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
I get that we're still in the headwind place.
Yeah.
But is it like 15 cents on the dollar? You're like, oh, okay, fine. Like, when does it become a valuation thing?
It becomes a valuation thing when you have some degree of conviction. You can lease that space.
Okay.
Right?
So it still has to come back to the fundamentals.
It has to come back to the fundamentals, right? That has to come back to that, number one. Number two, the financing markets are upside down for real estate. There's news today about that.
You've got banks that they kill for your business. They wine and dine you for 30 years. Now you go back to them and says, now I need the money. Well, I can buy this B-plus property on 3rd Avenue for 30 cents on the dollar. You know this is a good deal.
Right. Well, look, first of all, many managers of our scale are both on the equity. So 20 billion of our 85 billion, we're a lender. Okay. All right. So we have a lending business. So all the pain I am seeing our lenders bear right now, we bear as a lender as well. So that's complicated. the regulators, Basel III, there are a lot of headwinds against banks, regular way banks coming back into commercial real estate lending. That's why the private markets have exploded the way they have, and I think our view is that they're going to continue to be really robust. But the problem is a first mortgage on 60% loan to today's value that costs someone 9 to 10% is not a normally functioning capital market. It's just not.
Well, you know, to pick up on something that Alex and Paul were just asking about relative, and Alex in particular, the valuation. So Igal Namdar, not so long ago, went even further. He was saying some of these buildings, you could get them at less than 10 cents on the dollar. He was saying he thinks it's the bottom. It's hard to not think that's the bottom, but so many people that I talked to, so many of my sources, this is the one point of agreement as to whether how much pain there is ahead or not, that it's going to take a long time to work out. So how long do we just skirt along the bottom?
Just have about 20 seconds.
Well, if we're just talking about office, I'm not sure we're at the bottom yet.
Okay. That's kind of
that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Until I start seeing some of these things on 3rd Avenue, start trading in the comparable place in Boston and San Francisco, we'll see. Sonny Kalsi, thank you so much for joining us. Sonny Kalsi is the co-chief executive officer, BGO, and Abigail Doolittle, markets reporter for Bloomberg News, joining. Talk a little about commercial real estate. You can't put it all in one bucket. It's not all office. It's a lot of different stuff out there, but office is tough. Like keeping track of that. With our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Paul. Alex, John, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in Washington today and is slated to address a joint meeting of Congress. But his visit is not without controversy. Hundreds of protesters have already been demonstrating at the Capitol. President Biden makes his first public appearance since his historic decision to end his re-election campaign tonight with a primetime address from the Oval Office. We get more with David Gura, host of Bloomberg's The Big Take podcast.
What this kind of announcement might be like, of course, when LBJ decided not to run in 1968, we didn't have social media. He couldn't push a memo out, but that's how this happened. We got a memo on Twitter, on X, from President Biden saying he wasn't going to run again, and then teasing the speech that we're going to get tonight. So we will have that Oval Office moment in Washington tonight, 8 o'clock p.m., and as he said in that letter, he's going to explain his decision to the American people.
Bloomberg's David Gura will bring you live coverage of the president's address on Bloomberg Radio and TV. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris's next campaign stop will be in Indiana today. She will address the historically black Zeta Phi Beta sorority convention in Indianapolis. Former President Trump will speak this evening in Charlotte, North Carolina. FBI Director Christopher Wray is testifying today before a House committee on the assassination attempt against former President Trump.
And I want to assure you and the American people that the men and women of the FBI will continue to work tirelessly to get to the bottom of what happened.
Wray's testimony comes a day after Kimberly Cheadle resigned as chief of the U.S. Secret Service. Meanwhile, the police body cam video of the officers investigating the attempt on Donald Trump's life is now public. The video shows officers and Secret Service agents on the roof of the building approaching the body of the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg.